Hey, what's up everybody? It's OC. Just bringing you another update about this coronavirus thing. I'm going to jump right into it. It's a really long video, so let's get started. You're really going to want to know this information because it's really pertaining to every single one of you. No matter who is watching this is going to impact you. Please take the time to review real information for just a few moments. See the other series, video parts if this intrigues you in any way whatsoever. Please share the videos with everyone that you care about so that they can be able to also be safe in the right manner, because everyone has a right to true and real information, medical information. So we can make a difference, but we must speak up.
So this chapter is to help you understand the power of compounding. If something grows over time, such as population, demand for oil, money supply, really anything that steadily increases in size, and you graph it over time, the graph will look like a hockey stick. If something is increasing over time on a percentage basis, it's growing exponentially. Using an example drawing on the magnificent work of Dr. Albert Bartlett, let me illustrate the power of compounding for you. Suppose I had a magic eyedropper and I placed a single drop of water in the middle of your left hand. The magic part is that this drop of water is going to double in size every minute. At first, nothing seems to be happening. But by the end of a minute, that tiny drop is now the size of 2 tiny drops. After another minute, you now have a little pool of water that is slightly smaller in diameter than a dime sitting in your hand. After 6 minutes, you have enough water to fill a thimble. Now, suppose we take our magic eyedropper to Yankee Stadium, and right at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, we place a magic drop way down there on the pitcher's mound. To make this really interesting, suppose that the park is watertight and that I handcuff you to one of the very highest bleacher seats. My question to you is, how long do you have to escape from the handcuffs? When would the stadium be completely filled with water? Would it be days, weeks, months, years? How long would that take? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. The answer is you have until 12:50 on that same day to figure out how you're going to get out of those handcuffs. In 50 minutes, our modest little drop of water has completely managed to fill Yankee Stadium. Now let me ask you the more important question. At what time of the day would Yankee Stadium still be 93% empty space, and how many of you would realize the seriousness of your predicament? Any guesses? The answer is 12:45. If you were sitting idly in your bleacher seat waiting for help to arrive, by the time the field was covered with less than 5 feet of water, you would only have 5 minutes left to get free. And that right there illustrates one of the key features of compound growth. The one thing I want you to take away from all this is, with exponential functions, the action really only heats up in the last few moments. You sat in your bleacher seat for 45 minutes and nothing much seemed to be happening. And then in 4 minutes, bang, the whole place was full. This example was loosely based on a wonderful paper by Dr. Albert Bartlett that clearly and cleanly describes this process of compounding. Dr. Bartlett said, the greatest shortcoming of the human race is the inability to understand the exponential function. And he's absolutely right. That's what we're seeing right now. And so this brings up an important idea, which is this idea of herd immunity, which is when do enough people actually have circulating antibodies in their bodies so that this thing can stop on its own. So that's naturally how viruses get stopped in any population, whether it's starfish or sparrows or humans. So let's talk about herd immunity real quick. Decode this first. Blue people. Anywhere you see a blue person means they're not immunized, but they're still healthy. So they either haven't received an immunization vaccine shot or they haven't been exposed to and recovered from a specific virus. So they're not immunized, but still healthy. If you're yellow, you're immunized and healthy, right? And if you're red, you're not immunized, but you're sick and contagious, okay? So here, in a place where nobody is immunized, which is the case that we have with this coronavirus, there's no herd immunity. No one is immunized because we don't have a vaccine. No one's seen it before. So one person can spread it to a lot of people, and the contagious disease spreads really rapidly and easily through this population until there's just very few blue people left over here. Almost everybody's been exposed and got it. Alternatively, we could ask the question, well, what happens if 10% of the population is immunized? So that's these yellow people. It's about 1 in 10, if you count them up. So now this virus jumps into this population, ding, ding. And what happens? Boom, same thing. Contagious disease spreads right through the population. So it turns out there's some magic number of immunized people you need before you achieve this thing called herd immunity. Here's herd immunity here. Lots of immunized and healthy people. So when this disease jumps in, well, it might get this one here. See, this person turned red, but it couldn't get all the way over to this person who is then protected, right? And, this person tried to spread it, but they're completely surrounded, so there was nowhere to go. So these people are protected. So the question becomes, well, how much of our population has to be immunized or otherwise immunologically healthy with circulating antibodies against this thing in their body? So the answer is there's a relationship between the R naught and herd immunity here. So the herd immunity, so let's look at mumps, because I think that the R naught for this particular disease is clocking in around 4 to 7. And it says your threshold percent, okay, which is what's the threshold number? What percent of people have to be yellow in this picture in order to get basically herd immunity so that you have a chance of stopping something between 4 and 7. Well, but 4, it's about 75%. If it's got an R naught of 7, it's about 86%. So when we say 60% of the world might be infected by this thing in a year, we still haven't made it to the threshold immunity level for this particular piece of this virus for it not to spread. Now, obviously, if people have immunity, it's not going to spread to them, we hope. Again, we hope there's no secondary infection, but this whole idea that if enough people catch it, then we have herd immunity, I just need you to know it doesn't happen until at least 3/4 of the world has been exposed to it. And it's good that 80% of the people who get it, of course, have mild symptoms, because that gives us a chance. We'll get there. We will get a threshold percentage at some point, but not this spring, probably not this fall. I like the way this chart puts it. So listen, with or without protective measures, you're still going to have just as many people get the disease. But without protective measures, what happens is you get this big blob of people who come all at once. And if those number of cases exceed your healthcare system capacity, a lot of people unnecessarily die, okay? If you can shift the curve to the right, you heard me say that a couple of times recently. That's what this means. We've shifted the curve to the right, okay? If you can do that, you do that by making sure that the disease spreads a lot more slowly through your population. You do a lot of aggressive social distancing, you cancel large events, all that stuff, right? That gets you there. And the reason this is so important, let's go to Italy's experience, because I think Italy's experience is about to be mirrored by a lot of other countries who just didn't get on the ball fast enough and are now facing this. Whereas Singapore, Hong Kong, they shifted their curves through very aggressive measures, which, again, costs their economy a little bit, but going to save a lot of lives. So Italy's experience is this. So Antonio Pacenti, 68, the coordinator of the Lombardy Region Crisis Unit, super, super well-respected guy. They call him one of the best Italian men of science. He's a physician, resuscitator, strong nerves, accustomed to governing by any type of emergency. I mean, he's one of the people you'd want to have in charge, something like this. But at 9 o'clock on Saturday evening, after 17 days of nonstop work, his voice is broken by tiredness and worry. If the population does not understand that they must stay at home, the situation will become catastrophic. So with poor communication, which wasn't Antonio's job, by the way, that was the government's job, they announced a quarantine, but it leaked out, and all these people scattered and ran away from the Lombardy region, taking trains, planes, buses, bicycles, cars, anything they could to get out of there before the quarantine was slapped down, because they didn't want to be there, trapped under a quarantine. The population didn't understand what their role was in all of this, and so they scattered. And so, he's right. If the population does not understand that they must stay at home, the situation will become catastrophic. This is catastrophe right up here, okay? Let's see. I don't know who this is because I just cut this out. Somebody. Together with her colleagues and the Reanimations, is the author of a very harsh letter to the government of Giuseppe Conte. The scientific projections are very alarming. What do you mean by that? And then the answer here was, the picture is of such gravity as to require an increase in resuscitation places up to 10 times the current availability. So this is hospital capacity. The number of hospitalized patients expected on March 26 is around 18,000 Lombard patients. So that's in, 26? That's in 17 days from now. Of which between 2,700 and 3,200 will require hospitalization in intensive care. Today there are already over 1,000 patients between those in resuscitation and those who risk getting worse from 1 minute to the next. We monitor the situation 24 hours a day. They're already overloaded here. At this, they're already overloaded, and they haven't even gotten to this right here. Thinking of having to manage 2,700 to 3,200 people in intensive care. They have a fraction of that many beds. It's very alarming. So, continuing, so far in Lombardy, the ambulances have always arrived in 8 minutes, but now they risk not arriving within an hour. A huge danger for those who have a heart attack, say. And not only I don't know where that goes. Unfortunately, it is the truth. I'm not saying this to alarm citizens, but make everyone understand that it's not the time to go out, to go shopping, to go and drink the spritz, as we've been saying for days now. Social relations must be changed with the shops and neighborhood markets closed. In Milan, where I live, at least so far, there have been too many people needlessly around. You only have to go out to buy food. And wear your masks, wear your goggles, make sure that you're washing your hands and using hand sanitizer and all of that stuff, right? So this is really, this is a very urgent sort of a communication from somebody who really knows and is talking about these non-pharmaceutical interventions. And remember, it was in Taiwan that said carrot and the stick, but the stick in this story was if they caught you breaking quarantine, it was something like up to 5 years in jail. I think 5 months. It was something pretty harsh, and like a 2 million Taiwanese dollar fine, like $100,000. Like if you're caught breaking quarantine. Contrast that with the United States, where this just came out today on March 9th. There was this family. They were in quarantine. The dad was in quarantine. He decided, you know what, he'd rather attend the father-daughter dance at the local school, and now the school's closed. You know, oops. And here in the United States, the response was, if you do that like that again, we might have to involuntarily quarantine you, right? But in Taiwan, this guy had been put in jail, and he'd be facing a massive fine. That's what you have to do. All right, I want to repeat this because I'm getting a lot of pushback from people who tell me that I'm being alarmist, and I'm just here with facts. And I know this is hard. I know this is difficult. I know everybody's going to have a different adjustment process. I'm sensitive to the idea that I do have a very fast adjustment process when it comes to these things, and others don't. But if the facts alarm you, the problem isn't with the facts. We all have to go through this adjustment process. I'm going to make that one of the features of one of these next videos I'm going to put out because it's a super important concept. And listen, I'm not saying anybody's better or worse or nobody's bad because they have a slow adjustment process. It's a necessary process to go through, but it's an emotional process. It has nothing to do with the facts. And maybe you know somebody who's having trouble dealing with the facts. It's not the facts that they're having trouble with. However, if bad communication alarms you, you probably live in the United States. Remember, don't panic, and then you get this sort of thing like screaming across the newswire, U.S. urges elderly to stock up on groceries, prepare to stay at home, all caps, like this is not helpful. It didn't have to be this way. We could have easily done this differently. In fact, where's the program to help the elderly with a home delivery of groceries, a more healthy, sane, heart-centered culture, I think, would have not done it this way. Brad put it well. Stay calm, everyone. But we'll just hit you randomly with a headline like this one, from time to time. Boom. Not helpful. Or maybe we'll listen to this clown. And I told myself, Chris, don't hit the WHO anymore. It's not helping. Let's just get with the positive stuff. Let's talk about what people can do. But then the WHO comes out here today at 12:17 on March 19th and says, now that the coronavirus has a foothold in so many countries, the threat of a pandemic has become very real. What in the heck? But it would be the first pandemic in history that could be controlled. No, could have been, past tense there, Tedros. And the bottom line is, we are not at the mercy of this virus. Well, they're very uplifting, very uplifting. What do you mean the threat of a pandemic has become very real? Dude, this thing's raging and breaking hospital systems all over the globe right now. Okay, very frustrated with that. All right. this whole thing, I have to add one more thing. It's in the long bullet points of things we think we know about this particular coronavirus. Patients with mild cases are no longer infective 10 days after first symptoms. That's a really important additive to this story that we can add to all of these other things that we now know about this particular virus. And again, not peer-reviewed. A couple other things on here, not peer-reviewed, but this is the best we know at this point in time. All right, let's talk about bad info, the New York City edition. Here was the New York City mayor, de Blasio, coming out in a presser, and he said, it does not live on surfaces for more than a few minutes. It's not airborne. And that, of course, is completely wrong. We covered this data a number of days ago. So let's combat that, because maybe some of you are first-time listeners. So here's the data. Good info. This is the data-rich edition. This comes from the Journal of Hospital Infection. Here's the URL for this thing right here. Persistence of coronaviruses on inanimate surfaces and their inactivation with biocidal agents. So where are the punchlines? These things can live on surfaces like metal, glass, or plastic up to 9 days. Now, this isn't the coronavirus per se, but it's something darn close, which is the SARS virus, which they tested, the MERS virus, which they tested, and also the human coronaviruses, like this one, which causes gastric enteritis. All right, 9 days, up to 9 days. Where's this person, where's the mayor of New York City getting their information? Does not live on surfaces more than a few minutes. That is just absolutely not what the data says. This is the gold standard. This is a meta-study, looked at 22 other studies right there, and came to these conclusions as well. All you need to know is that if you are going to disinfect something, 62 to 71% ethanol. I've seen some of you talking about homemade hand sanitizer. You're starting with 70% isopropyl alcohol. You can't do that, because once you cut that, you're getting below that 62 mark. So you got to make sure, calculate your percentages. If you're going to make hand sanitizer at home, I support that. Make sure you stay in this range if you can, because this is the range that denatures the proteins in the viruses, inactivates them. Pure ethanol doesn't do that. It could kill them for other reasons, but this is one of the most effective ranges right here. We know it works, 62 to 71. Or 0.5% hydrogen peroxide, or my fave, 0.1% sodium hypochlorite, that's bleach. Inactivates within 1 minute, okay? So not impossible to kill. It's not a super, impossible thing. You gotta be on it, and you gotta know what it's all about. But let's cover this idea. Should you wash your hands? Yes. Pally Thorson wrote this really great tweet. God, look at that, 34,000 retweets, 56,000 likes. I love it. People caught this and spread it all around. She answers the question in this. This is one of 25, so there's a lot of data under here, but I'm just going to give you the top part of this. Why does soap work so well on the SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus, and indeed most viruses? Because it is a self-assembled nanoparticle, here it is, in which the weakest link is the lipid fatty bilayer. That's these little, you can see them, those little grayish things down there. So what's a soap? Well, a soap is it's a fat coupled to a charged end, and the fat comes in and works on this fatty bilayer and breaks it up. So when you wash your hands with soap, what you're doing is ruining its outer coat membrane that holds the whole thing together, and it just falls apart, okay? The soap dissolves the fat membrane, and the virus falls apart like a house of cards and dies, or rather we should say becomes inactive, as viruses aren't really alive. Sort of. Well, we don't know. They don't replicate themselves. Big debate about that, but I think I'll go with it. Viruses can remain active outside the body for hours, even days, maybe 9 days, Mayor de Blasio, right? Disinfectants or liquids, wipes, gels, and creams containing alcohol and soap have similar effects, but are not really quite as good as normal soap. Apart from the alcohol and soap, the antibacterial agents in these products don't really affect the virus structure much at all, because those are antibacterial, and we're talking viruses, bacteria and viruses, totally different life forms, or one's a life form, one sort of isn't. That's the virus. Consequently, many antibacterial products are basically just an expensive version of soap in terms of how they act on viruses. Soap is the best, but alcohol wipes are pretty good when soap is not practical or handy, say office receptions. All right, so wash your hands. How do we avoid being infected? We're going to add 2 things to our list from the other day. Of course, we're going to start with avoid all gatherings, large or small. Just avoid them. That's it. That's how you stop this thing. Social distancing, number 1, best solution to stopping any viral infection. Social distancing. People have asked me, though, when do I come out of my own self-isolation, which I am in right now because we have this endemic in my region, and my strategy is to not get it and not be a drain on my local hospital system. So that's what I'm going to do. My litmus test, though, is that once everyone is wearing a mask out when out and about, this idea can be relaxed a bit. So once everybody's wearing a mask, then I'm more comfortable because, of course, I don't know who's asymptomatic carrying and all of that. And a mask mostly prevents a sick person from spreading it much more well than it does prevent a sick person, a well person from stopping the intrusion of a virus. So as soon as everybody's wearing one, it's fine. Just like Hong Kong. And by the way, Hong Kong, awesome data. They've absolutely not only crushed the spread of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but they've also crushed ordinary seasonal flu. So big learnings coming out of there, which is, yes, we can do something about it. Dr. Tedros is right. We absolutely can't. Where did that part go? He's right. I forget. I lost him already. That's okay. Don't need to bring him back. But we can do something about it. But first, we've got to get the social distancing down, and we've got to get the social practices in of making sure everybody understands their role in maintaining quarantine, not going out when they're sick, putting a mask on when they're out in public. All right, but we're going to add to all this other stuff, which I read through the other time. You can read it yourself, is wash your hands. Yeah, that's how you avoid being infected. Wash your hands with soap, ordinary soap, nothing fancy. Ivory soap, whatever soap, all be good. I hate to say it too, but one way to avoid being infected is avoid listening to certain public officials, unfortunately many of them, that are giving out what I consider to be inexcusably bad information. Okay? All right, the markets are in complete meltdown mode right now. I just pulled this a second ago. The Dow down 1,600 points, 6.28%. Oh my God, the Russell down 7%. It's happening. The DAX is down 8%, 19% still, 19.5% crude oil just shellacked, just crushed. This is going to have huge repercussions. Bonds screaming higher, of course, and that means the yields are dropping. Unbelievable price there on the 30-year bond, which dropped below 1%. Unbelievable. I can't believe any of this. It's just keep a journal. This is astonishing. Gold kind of holding up compared to everything else, and so we're going to be talking a lot about this. The economic impacts, I think, are going to be the thing that hurts more people, honestly, directly than the virus itself on a long-term basis. So I'm going to be focusing a lot more on that. But these videos have been about the health side. It's about understanding the virus. It's about understanding transmission, about communicability. I'm going to keep these videos that way, but there are also going to be another series of videos coming out, and you'll find those at peakprosperity.com if you're interested in figuring out and learning about all the market impacts and how we decode this and look at those as well. All right, conclusions for today. Hey, we are nowhere remotely close to achieving herd immunity. Might be a full year or two before we get even close to that, depending on how fast this spreads. Summer won't be without SARS-CoV-2, just quieter, we hope. Of course, this could be different. It could be maybe completely gone by summer because SARS-CoV-2 is different, or maybe it's still with us. We don't know. But we hope that it will be mostly gone. Exponential growth, vital. It's really vital you understand it. Rewatch that little video clip again if you need to. The doubling times ex-China are running about 4 days at present. No idea when that's going to slow down. Don't know that yet. Markets are in the process of bursting, which they're bursting a very ill-advised third everything bubble that the central banker has fostered or blew. Shame on them for that. I've had a lot of commentary about that over the years. Remember, the disease progression of this is case, cluster, boom. And yesterday, or actually day before yesterday, I said, man, somebody should turn that into a T-shirt. Hey, somebody did. Now with swag, the case, cluster, boom series here by Jake Stollery. Well done, Jake, for jumping out on that. I really admire all sorts of entrepreneurship. And I have zero connection with this or Jake. I've never met him before. No financial arrangement. I'm just putting this out there because I love seeing entrepreneurship. As well, remember to resubscribe if you need to, because people are still getting unsubscribed and unsubbed from this thing. And yeah, that's happening a bunch. So at any rate, with that, just resubscribe. And that's all I have for you today. We'll be back tomorrow.
So we can't trust the world's governments at this point. We have England saying the death rate's around 1%. We have the mayor of New York City saying the death rate is around 5%, but as high as 10 to 20% if you have asthma or autoimmune diseases. We have WHO, the World Health Organization, saying that it's at least 3.4%. Some provinces in China have 14% death rates. The official figures so far are a 6% death rate. The virus is mostly in China still at this point, with over 80,000 cases. Some experts are saying that the number of cases are dropping, but it's really hard to tell because China doesn't have free media, so nobody's quite sure. And they don't really let in the CDC or very many experts or outside scientists. Japan, South Korea, Singapore, basically most of Southeast Asia, Australia, Egypt, America, Canada, Brazil, India, and most other countries in the world will have this if they don't already. Western Europe and America are probably about a month behind China as far as the progress of the disease. America seems to have the more deadly strain of the mutation, along with Italy and Iran. As I was saying before in a lot of my other videos, I was thinking like 2 weeks ago that the virus had mutated because scientists in Canada and Wuhan had seen mutations between a family cluster in Wuhan. So I guess it mutated in Wuhan at some point, and some of the countries have the more deadly strain, some of them have the weaker strain, which doesn't cause as many deaths. It looks like South Korea and Japan may have the weaker strain. In America, scientists are saying that they've tested people and they found both strains. So New York, a lot of the people getting this in New York City are going into critical condition pretty fast. One guy has spread it to like 2 to 3 dozen other people. The R0 seems to be really high, probably closer to 7 at this point. I was saying weeks ago that it probably was a higher death rate and a higher R0, but everybody was saying that was crazy and conspiracy talk. It's just crazy how in 2 weeks we went from this is a conspiracy, it will never go outside of China, it will never mutate, the death rate is only like the same as the flu, 0.001, to the virus is now mutated. That's confirmed by like all scientists. It's now confirmed even by WHO that the mortality rate's at least 3.5%. It's really worrying. At this point, the virus will not be contained. Countries in Asia seem to be trying to contain this the most. America and Europe, Australia just don't seem to be taking this that serious for some reason. The medicine and medical gear for treating airborne diseases, gloves, goggles, all that stuff is made in China. There's some factories in Germany, but Germany has stopped the export of all of their PPE, protective gear, and there's only 2 factories in America that make N95 masks, and it's going to be bad. America is going to run out of protective gear, and when this spreads further into countries in Africa that are already dealing with Ebola and other viruses, it's going to be a disaster when it spreads to countries that are in the middle of wars like Syria, poor countries in the Middle East. In America, the Surgeon General is telling us not to wear face masks, that they don't protect you. But like, I want to see these respirators, I want to look at these because they have the valves on them, so they're saying they should only be worn for sick people, but like the ones you get at Home Depot for construction, they have the valves on them, so sick people can't even wear them because the air coming out is not filtered. And American nurses and doctors, they don't use those reusable masks that other people are wearing. So they would never really use most of the mask at Home Depot. In Washington, where they have hundreds of cases, they've already ran out of masks at some hospitals, so doctors and nurses just aren't using masks anymore. The government in America says they didn't prepare, and they have about 1% of the face masks that we would need if this were to spread across America. So hospitals are already out of N95 masks and running out of surgical masks too. And because there's only 2 small factories in America that make these masks, they just aren't going to get them. Seattle area and Spokane and Kirkland, and we're like all over Washington, the hospitals have resorted to going to veterinarian offices, dental offices, construction companies, and pleading for masks. They've had like mask rallies and stuff to get donations for masks. They're out of them, and some of the workers in the hospital aren't wearing masks because they don't want to. They don't think it's serious. It's not a requirement that you wear the mask. So Prestige Ameritech is the largest mask manufacturer in America, and they say that they're not going to increase mask production. And over the last 2 to 3 months, they haven't increased mass production at all, not even 0.1%, because their reason is they don't want to hire people and then maybe lay them off if the disease is cured. They don't want to have to tell people they're laying them off. But like, this is ridiculous. And they're saying the American government hasn't even contacted them. This is the largest N95 mask manufacturer in America. We're out of masks everywhere. And they say the American government hasn't even contacted them for a contract or to make more masks. They say they're only at like half capacity, and they're not hiring anybody. And their exact words are, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. We don't like to lay people off. We're like, oh wow, people are gonna die. This is ridiculous. We got 2 mask factories in America, and the largest one is saying, oh, we don't want to have to lay people off if the virus is cured, or you make so many masks that people don't need them anymore. This is ridiculous. This is the incompetence in the American healthcare system. This is why this is going to spread like a wildfire in America. It's going to ravage senior homes, nursing homes. It's going to ravage hospitals. We have people in Seattle, nurses who don't even wear masks already because they don't like them. And most of the hospitals are either out of them or they're reusing them. Washington State, they're even running out of protective gear. They're running out of goggles, gloves, everything. So basically, as soon as your city gets to have about 100 or 200 cases, you can expect the hospitals to have no masks left, to be very low on even things like gloves, have no goggles left, face visors will be low, everything. When this comes to your city, I would stay away from the hospitals. Nobody's prepared. Nobody in America prepared for this. The government didn't even get 1% of the face masks like 3 months ago. They should have seen this coming. America screwed us all. The government screwed us. They could have easily went to these factories and requested them to produce more masks for our healthcare providers so that doctors and nurses could have masks, but instead we have the Surgeon General telling us not to buy construction masks at Home Depot. Don't listen to the government. If you can get a mask and protect yourself.